A boy from Missouri moved to Montana to become a farm broadcaster, then moved to Washington, D.C. to serve 3 terms in the United States Senate. The Honorable Retired Senator Conrad Burns is our first honoree this evening. Conrad's life is a statement of what a man can accomplish if he puts his mind to it. He was born in 1935 on a not-too-productive northwest Missouri farm near Gallatin.
I was raised in Davies County, Missouri. Dad had a small farm, 160 acres of 2 rocks and 1 dirt, and it wasn't the best farm in the world, but he made it work.
So it was tough going to make it through the Depression and into the 1950s. In that time period, Russell and Mary Frances Burns raised Conrad and his younger sister Judy. They did crop farming and maintained a herd of 45 registered Black Angus cattle. Conrad somehow managed to enter the University of Missouri, majoring in animal science and journalism.
I had a job when I was going to college at Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, with the Forest Service. And I hitchhiked out there, and I went through Montana and just fell in love with the state. And then I quit my job in Coeur d'Alene before I got my first paycheck, which that shows you how smart I am.
He served in the United States Marine Corps for 2 years, then became a station agent for Ozark Airlines in Kansas City. He took a job with the American Polled Hereford Association and traveled for the Polled Hereford World for 5 years. That got him back to Montana, where he managed the Northern International Livestock Exposition. He handled advertising and public relations for the Billings Livestock Commission Company and the Riverton Auction Company. In 1967, he asked Phyllis Kuhlman, daughter of Irwin Kuhlman, if she would like to go to a movie, and she said, "Yes, I'll marry you." That, however, is not her story.
I was doing business with her dad. I worked his bull sale. So I even got a couple of bulls, and I got his daughter too.
Conrad's knowledge of agriculture and his friendly demeanor allowed him to carve out a spot on KULR-TV as farm and ranch director. However, he was terminated from that position because of his habit of wearing cowboy boots into the building and leaving chunks of manure on the entryway rug. Management thought it was bad public relations for visitors to have to smell and sidestep Conrad's droppings.
They sent a new station manager in up here, and he didn't like cowboys, and he walked by me and he took a deep breath and he said, "My goodness, you're not going in there smelling like that." But he was from California, didn't know anything, hardly. He's a poor man, he was just not very smart. And
So in 1975, he hooked up with Dale Fairley and they started a radio network. Conrad threw in with Colorado-based Evan Slack to produce daily broadcasts on stations across Montana and Wyoming.
But he was on the Intermountain Network and very popular, Evan was. Higher, higher, higher. And they liked that.
His rate card was in the low single digits, but he kept at it and put a radio station on the air in Laurel, Montana to boost his reach. The Northern Ag Network managed to get a spread of stations across Montana and northern Wyoming all the way to Casper. The 60-second spot rate got close to $100, and he was on his way. Burns and Slack took their first Doan survey and found that they beat their nearest competitor 3-1. Their publicity declared that NBS was the dominant force in Montana farm broadcasting. A highly successful move by Conrad was to hire Taylor Brown in 1979. A ranch kid just out of college, Taylor learned the business from Conrad and eventually purchased Northern Broadcasting in 1986. In the years that followed, he expanded the network to make Conrad's dream an even stronger force in broadcasting.
From the Northern Ag Network, I'm Taylor Brown. Time now for the Morning Ag Report.
It was said by many that Conrad knew agriculture, but it was his bigger-than-life personality that made it all work.
Lamb market this week, my heaven, 70-60 top on the lamb.
Conrad's fame grew and he became widely known. Dave Wilson of Fisher Radio wrote, "To see Conrad address a group of farmers and ranchers is akin to watching the Pied Piper. He jokes, he reports, he investigates, he relates. People will follow him anywhere." That idea was soon to be put to the test. In 1986, when he was 51 years old.
Well, I went to a fair board meeting, and I didn't like the way they were treating the kids at the fair. You know, fairs are for kids. And so they were trying to push the kids out of the backside of the fairgrounds and make more room for carnival and horse racing. I said, well, now, we're losing. Some of those buildings down there are designed for 4-H and agriculture and on exhibition in our county. And this county commissioner stood up and said, well, times change, faces change, some things got to go and some things got to stay. And I said, by gosh, that's probably a pretty good idea, and it's going to be you. And so I ran against him and beat him. And that's where I started in politics.
2 years later, as a Republican, he ran for the United States Senate against another popular incumbent.
And by golly, to the surprise of a lot of us, we won.
In Washington politics, Conrad proved to be much smarter and more adaptable than his critics expected. He focused on agriculture and communications, and on environmental issues that were dogging the raw material industries in his state. He was a proponent of letting local telephone companies offer video services and allowing them to roll out a broadband fiber optic network across rural areas. Conrad Burns, not Al Gore, was one of the fathers of the modern internet. He served 3 terms as a United States Senator, representing the great state of Montana, and he did it with purpose. He did it with dignity. He kept himself humble. Some of his comments were so refreshing that he might be considered a modern-day Will Rogers. For instance, bureaucrats can make a lot of bad decisions, but they still get a paycheck. As long as we're not in session, the country feels pretty good, and we can't do them any damage. We all do dumb things 15 minutes a day. The key is not to go over your quota. Now, he is back in Montana and enjoying life. Conrad and Phyllis have 3 children, Keely and Garrett, and Kate, who is deceased.
But Phyllis, my wife, I will tell you, we had 3 kids, and even through this business and after I had the stroke, she has been a rock, and she was a great supporter when I was in the United States Senate. And you just don't find many like Phyllis. I mean, she is just, what you see is what you get. There's not one phony bone in that woman's body.
Conrad Burns used his God-given talents to rise from humble beginnings. He maintained a friendly and energetic disposition and never stopped trying. In the halls of the United States Senate, he never forgot where he came from. He is a pioneer in communications and a political legend. He will live long in the hearts of his fellow farm broadcasters. As our highest honor, Conrad Burns becomes a member of the National Association of Farm Broadcasters Hall of Fame.